What drives an emperor to step down from his position of absolute power to face gladiators in deadly arenas? Commodus, one of Rome's most eccentric emperors, didn't just rule the empire. He fought in the arena as a gladiator. But who were the men who dared to face him? Were they mere slaves? Or were they highly trained gladiators skilled enough to challenge the leader of the Roman world? The battles Commodus fought in the arena are surrounded by stories of courage, strategy, and brutality. Today, we're uncovering who these opponents were, the tactics they used, and what really happened when an emperor fought for his life in Rome's most lethal stage. Stay tuned, because what we're about to reveal will change your perception of Commodus and the blood-soaked world of the Roman arena. What could drive a man who held absolute power over the largest empire in the known world to seek thrills in the blood-soaked sands of the Roman arena? Commodus' obsession with the arena was not just a peculiar quirk of his rule. It was a manifestation of his larger-than-life ego and desire for public adoration. Raised in luxury, Commodus had the chance to live as the ultimate ruler, but instead, he craved something more primal. He wanted to be revered not only as emperor, but also as a godlike figure of physical prowess. From a young age, Commodus showed signs of this fascination with combat and power. Unlike previous emperors who distanced themselves from the lower elements of Roman life, Commodus dove headfirst into the violent entertainment culture. He saw the arena not just as a stage for warriors, but as a place where he could prove his strength and dominance over both men and beasts. His participation blurred the line between the sacred untouchability of the emperor and the raw brutality of a gladiator. The public was torn between admiration and horror. On the one hand, some were awestruck by the emperor's willingness to engage in the arena, a place where most emperors would never dare to set foot. On the other hand, many saw it as a disgrace, a ruler lowering himself to the level of criminals and slaves. But for Commodus, it was not just a spectacle. It was an opportunity to reinforce his perceived divine right to rule. Every fight was an affirmation of his supposed superiority. Yet, there was something deeper driving Commodus. Perhaps a need to prove his worth physically, a stark contrast to the intellectual and diplomatic nature of his predecessors. As emperor, Commodus' power was unchallenged in the political realm, but in the arena, he could engage in a more visceral form of dominance. For him, the arena symbolized a battleground where his physicality, rather than his political acumen, could shine. His decision to regularly fight in the arena, however, left the Roman elite and the Senate aghast. This wasn't merely the behavior of an eccentric ruler, but of a man obsessed with his own image and legacy. He wasn't content with statues and triumphs. He wanted the sweat, blood, and cheers of the Colosseum to cement his place in Roman history. While Commodus was undeniably powerful, his opponents in the arena were subject to rigorous scrutiny. The Roman populace was accustomed to watching life-or-death struggles between gladiators. But when an emperor stepped into the ring, the stakes changed dramatically. The question was, who would dare stand against the most powerful man in Rome? Were these gladiators selected for their skill, or were they mere pawns, chosen to ensure the emperor's victory? Historical accounts suggest that many of Commodus' opponents were not random picks from the gladiatorial pool. Some were seasoned warriors, while others were intentionally disadvantaged fighters, hand-selected to offer Commodus the semblance of a challenge without actually posing a true threat. The emperor's obsession with his image meant that any fight he participated in had to end in his triumph. Anything less would be unthinkable. There were, however, whispers that some of the gladiators chosen to face Commodus were not as easily defeated as the emperor had anticipated. These men, often slaves or prisoners of war who had been trained for years in the art of combat, possessed the skills and the knowledge to make the fight look authentic. To survive, these gladiators had to walk a fine line, delivering a performance convincing enough to entertain the crowd, but careful not to harm the emperor too severely, lest they face brutal consequences. Despite the careful selection process, even Commodus couldn't avoid close calls. Some gladiators, emboldened by the sheer spectacle of the moment, dared to push the limits of what was acceptable. A handful of matches became tense and unpredictable, with Commodus forced to rely on his training and brute strength to subdue his opponents. These moments of uncertainty thrilled the crowds, adding an extra layer of danger and intrigue to the Emperor's public persona. The truth behind these gladiators remains elusive. Were they victims of a controlled spectacle, or warriors genuinely fighting for their lives? The line between real and staged combat was often blurred in Commodus' reign, and the gladiators who faced him were no different, caught between the expectations of an emperor and the deadly reality of the arena. In the brutal world of gladiatorial combat, survival often hinged on more than just brute strength. It required cunning, strategy, and the ability to read one's opponent in mere seconds. Those gladiators who faced Commodus knew they were stepping into a highly politicized and deadly dance. But despite the odds being heavily stacked against them, many employed strategies designed to prolong the fight, or at least maintain their dignity in front of a bloodthirsty audience. For Commodus, the arena was not just a place to showcase his physical prowess. It was also a stage for demonstrating his tactical mind. He was well trained in combat techniques, having access to the finest instructors in the empire. His movements were sharp, calculated, and aggressive. He often played the role of the dominant predator, circling his opponent before moving in for the kill. However, despite his advantages, some of the more experienced gladiators who fought him knew how to exploit even the slightest hesitation or overconfidence. One such tactic employed by skilled gladiators was to draw Commodus into a longer battle. Knowing that the emperor was intent on looking powerful and decisive, these men would feign weakness, leading him into a false sense of security. By pretending to struggle, they could lure him into overextending his attacks or tiring himself out, creating fleeting opportunities to strike back. These weren't full-out counterattacks meant to win, but rather efforts to prolong their survival and give the crowd a better show. Another common tactic was to focus on defensive maneuvers, allowing Commodus to display his skills while the gladiator minimized his own risks. Shield work, dodging, and quick footwork became essential in these battles, with the goal of staying alive just long enough to avoid Commodus' wrath while still satisfying the demands of the crowd. The gladiators knew that while they couldn't defeat Commodus outright, they could make the match more compelling and, in some cases, gain favor by making him work for his victory. The strategic element of these matches made them far more than simple displays of brute force. Each fight became a psychological battle as well, a test of endurance, patience, and the ability to outwit an emperor who held not only physical power but political life and death over every participant. As the legend of Commodus' battles in the arena grew, so did the speculation surrounding the true nature of these fights. Were they genuine contests, or merely spectacles crafted to further cement Commodus' image as an invincible warrior? The blurred line between reality and theater in ancient Rome made it difficult for contemporary observers and modern historians to discern the truth. Commodus' ego demanded constant validation, and it is widely believed that many of the gladiatorial contests were rigged to ensure his victory. The emperor would often fight against weaker opponents, those who had little chance of winning and were perhaps even instructed to throw the match. These staged battles fed into Commodus' narrative of invincibility, portraying him as a gladiator emperor who could not be bested in combat. Despite the obvious imbalance of power, some fights managed to evoke genuine drama. These were the moments when a gladiator, either out of desperation or sheer instinct, fought back with surprising ferocity. Whether it was a calculated act of defiance or simply the reflexes of a trained warrior, these brief flashes of rebellion injected a sense of uncertainty into the proceedings, thrilling the audience and challenging the emperor's dominance. However, the tightly controlled nature of these spectacles couldn't hide the fact that Commodus' participation in the arena was as much about performance as it was about combat. His image was meticulously managed, and every fight had to bolster his reputation. The emperor's victories were public relations events, reinforcing the idea that Commodus was not just a ruler by blood, but a warrior by fate. This manipulation of the arena's dynamics left many Romans questioning the authenticity of the battles. Could an emperor truly claim the mantle of a gladiator when the game was rigged in his favor? Yet, for the common people, The spectacle of an emperor fighting in the arena was too sensational to resist. Whether the fights were real or controlled, the image of Commodus, bloodied but triumphant, marching out of the arena, left an indelible mark on Roman culture.